Tillegi initially, Mike Dishkis initially, Billigana Bashashin, Kinlachini Dashache, Billigana Dashanale. Welcome back to Resball, where this time we're going to talk about BYU point guard, straight out of Russia, Yegor Demin. I mean, if you know international basketball, then you know about Yegor for quite some time. He's definitely made his name known out there, and fantastic to see him at BYU showcase all the point guard skills that he has. We'll get in a little bit of discussion of like NIL and how that might change the game with European prospects like this. So let's get into Yegor Demin right about now. So yes, it's Egor is how the name is spelled, but it's pronounced Yegor Demin. Just so you know, again from Moscow. So a lot of times you'll hear guys get the Russian label when they're not actually from Russia, just because America we don't always distinguish between a lot of the various and diverse countries there in Eastern Europe and Russia. But Igor is from Russia, from Moscow. Really grew up there, went to the Moscow Basketball Academy. He was recruited a bunch by a bunch of different European teams, had his chances to go to, I believe, some Russian professional teams, but really wanted to stay with his coach there at the Moscow Basketball Academy. And then finally, at 15 years old, put his name out there 2021 and got some recruitment from the top teams in the European basketball in the EuroLeague and went to probably the top team. And it pains me to say this because I am more of a Barca fan than I am Real Madrid, so hate me all you want for that. But Real Madrid, and just look at the development system, Luka Doncic being the best. That's where Yegor Demin went, was to Real Madrid. Made his debut for their senior squad. So if you don't know how EuroLeague basketball and a lot of the overseas teams in Europe and that part of the world, like the Turkish league and Russian, Serbia, all those areas, Lithuania, they normally have an A squad, which is like the team that's out there that's professional and that gets the big bucks that wins the championships and stuff. And then they have the B squad, which is normally like the junior teams. We don't have that in America with professional teams, but think of it as like varsity, junior varsity. And if you're in the bigger squads, they normally have like a C team too, where they recruit kids like this at normally even younger than that, like 10, 11, all the way to 13, something like that. Put them in their junior development system. And then when they're ready, normally around like 20 ish, then they actually get up to the senior squad and get to play with all the other professionals. But Yegor made his debut at 17 years old. Didn't get a lot of minutes, but still, anytime you were promoted to the senior club as that young of a kid at 17 years old, that means you got some real game, especially at Real Madrid, where they don't promote just anybody. You got to be ready. You got to have game. You got to know what to do. So decides what to do after that of like, what am I going to do? And ends up coming to BYU as 18, 19-year-old kid. Will this change? I think this is going to change a little bit the way European prospects look at their NBA draft prospects. I mean, it definitely should. It's going to get eyeballs on you. You're probably going to earn a little bit better of a deal than what you would playing overseas. And the Adidas Next Generation tournaments, before I get into everything else about Jaeger, the stats and stuff, the Adidas Next Generation tournaments, I believe it would have been like 2024 and 2023. The 2023 one, if I remember correctly, Yegor got them to the title game, the championship game in that one. But in both tournaments, I mean, that guy was all over the court, played incredibly well for the Real Madrid B squad. So if you really want to get into more Yegor stuff, those would be the ones that I would say definitely look at those Adidas Next Generation tournaments. If you want to look up some more Yegor Demin film before the actual college and see what that looks like. Because in the college film, it is a little bit more supplementary. And in the Adidas Next Generation tournaments, I think that gives you a better indication of like, okay, if he is actualized and we give him the ball and he is one of our primary guys, what does that look like? Well, at BYU, though, this past season, Yegor Demin scored 10.6 points per game, had 3.9 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists per game, 1.2 steals, 0.9 blocks per game, and then 2.9 turnovers per game. Shooting splits for Yegor Demin were 55.3% from 2-point range, 27.3% from 3-point range, and then 69.5% from that free throw line. I'm going to dive into the totals real quick because the number one standout is as a passer, 180 assists to 97 turnovers, just barely missed the 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. But really, that is where you see Yegor stand out as a passer, and why I group it with Kasper Zagachonis and Sean Gilbert. Again, I call these guys kind of the old school passers or the old school point guards. I think Yegor is definitely that old school type of this guy is just going to set the table and really not do too much else on offense. Because that kind of player has been a little bit phased out. Like Rajon Rondo is probably the best version of this, the last version of this in I don't know, modern, quote unquote, after 2010 ish type of thing where like he didn't really shoot threes. He didn't necessarily generate pressure on the rim. He's not like this knockdown 3 point or mid range shooter. He didn't get to the free throw line. He was just an elite setup man who had enough offense to stay on the court. And he was such a good point guard and court vision and getting guys easy shots with his assists that like every time he took him out the court, there was a noticeable difference in guys getting easy shots. So that is what Yegor is going to be like. I'm not going to compare Yegor to Rajon Rondo. So not that for sure. But like I said, this is a archetype I think that still can work, but is not necessarily always seen in the NBA. And I don't think Yegor is going to fit that to a T. I do think there is more modern offense and there's a little bit untapped. But the offense is the big question mark. 50.9% true shooting percentage. That's for anybody, especially bad for a perimeter player. That just screams like, oof. There's a lot to work on. You don't have a reliable 3 point shot, as we saw with the percentage. I don't know if you're necessarily attacking the rim, and then you look at the free throw attempt rate, 26.8%. Not bad, but definitely not something that's super reliable. And you see the 3 point attempt rate of 50.3%. The positive side of that is, as I've said before with other guys like Kasparis and I think it was John Tonde, was like anytime you're around 50%, like it's clear you have a varied attack. You're not really dominant in one area. You're not over reliant on the three. You're not over reliant on the mid range. Now, over reliant on getting inside and doing shots. You're trying to balance out both shots from distance and things inside the 2 point arc. But again, for Yegor, 50% 3 point attempt rate, 50% true shooting. It screams, okay, cool. You got the balance, but you got to knock him down, man. Mm, Spoiler alert, not the most reliable guy on offense. Yegor at the beginning of the year, in the first like 4 or 5 games, people were talking about in the top five and at some point in the top three. But as the season wore on and we saw that he couldn't handle being the man and didn't really generate a lot of offense like a lot of people wanted to, this is where he's knocked down. And to me, is outside of the top 10. I understand if people want to still argue for him in the top 10, but to me, it's hard when you see this inconsistency from him on three, and we'll get into shot chart and stuff here. The size and stuff is great, which we'll also get to here in just a second. But man, when you got guys like Trey Johnson, Kasparas, VJ Edgecombe, Con Knipple, even somebody like Derek Queen or Liam McNeely, like those guys definitely show more reliable offense and why I put them over Yegor. Normally I wait till the end to say the ranking, but for Yegor, I have him at 14 right now. He's probably still kicking around into 11 to 15. Like for me, I just can't justify rolling the dice. And Igor is somebody that was brought up to me 2 years ago, I think. If you listen to this podcast for a while, every year we've had Ignacio Risotto, who now works for the scouting department for the Mexico City Capitans in Mexico City in the G League. I mean, he's probably the best international scout, in my opinion, Ignacio. And his thing with Yegor has always been like the potential is there, but just the inconsistency has plagued Yegor from the start. Like you like the size, you like the passing, but man, it just doesn't have a reliable offensive skill quite yet. And why I have him at 14, despite being 6'8.25" without shoes. That's what Egor Demin measured into the combine. So this is a legitimate 6'9" dude that can pass like that and has a 50-50 split on 2 point shots, 3 point shots. Again, 6'8.25" without shoes, 199.2 pounds, and then 6'10.25" wingspan. I'm not gonna lie, this is the one where I'm like, man, I wish your wingspan was better. Just because 6'9", you're a 6'9" guy that can play the main setup guy, point guard. Yeah, oh man, if he had a 7 foot wingspan or whatever, that'd be awesome. But 6'10.25" again, it's not bad at all. It's just you'd hope it'd be a bigger bit plus. But again, 6'9" guy, 199 pounds that can play the point. The shot chart, oh buddy. The main shot Diego took was from beyond the break threes, 138 total threes. Only drained 37 of them. That's 26.8%. And then for the corners, 414, 28.6%. The corners, this is another one where I'm not really going to argue for being a corner shooter. Maybe you use Yegor more from the wing, but I think even with the offensive struggles, the passing stands out so much that it's like you want to at least have this guy be a primary ball handler, set up other people. Again, this is not the comp, but think of somebody like Tyus Jones and why he keeps getting jobs, or Trey Jones, his brother, those type of guys where like sure they're not the reliable number one option, even if they do end up starting, they're definitely like the fifth guy, but they set up other people so well, and you hear their teammates and want to play with them and want them to get more shine and be the guy setting up the play, maybe not finishing it, but just has that court vision and an ability to get their teammates easier shots. So yeah, I do think the three has to get better, obviously, because that's probably the area where Yegor can make some more money and really separate himself, especially at that size, 6'9". So working on a 3-point shot has to be number one. No mid-range game to speak of, 6 of 23 in the mid-range. And really, there's only one area in the mid-range, that was the right elbow, where Yegor took more than 4 shots. So right elbow, 3 of 12. Left elbow, 1 of 4. Left baseline, 1 of 4. Right baseline, 1 of 3. Again, it's such a small sample size, and it's something that you just haven't seen him do at all, really. So I wouldn't argue for a mid-range game. And if you're somebody that wants to take him in the top 10, like, you're really saying this guy can only shoot at the rim and from three. And that is a little harder of a sell for anybody in the top 10, in my opinion, if they're not like a mega athlete, a mega lockdown defender, or something else. The difference between like, because the VJ Edgecombe is the other one that comes into mind here, where you're like, well, you like VJ Edgecombe a lot, and he can only shoot threes and at the rim. And it's like, yeah, that's right. But VJ also can lock down the point guard. He can also take on the best option on defense on the perimeter, you know, and you still see him generate free throws and be able to get lobs and stuff like that due to that athleticism. For Yegor, it's like, okay, if he's not shooting threes, what else is he bringing to the table? He's definitely not a lockdown defender. Definitely ain't a lob threat. There's not this standout athleticism. The size is nice, but really it comes down to that is like, okay, if he's not knocking down threes, then what else is he going to be doing for you out there? Great setup guy, but the Trey Jones is where like leaning more towards that way, because you see Trey be a backup mainly because he doesn't have a 3-point shot. Even in the seasons where he has a good percentage, like he's barely taking any, and it's just like, okay, we don't really have to respect this guy or defend him. Doesn't matter how tall he is, because we know how limited that is. Egor Demin, 16 of 33 on shots in the paint. Pretty good there. But again, that's a smaller sample size, so I don't know like how much touch Yegor has around there. And then 96 shots at the rim, 64.6%. That's a little better. And that would be the one thing I would really want him to work on after the 3-point shot, is like coming up with ways to finish better at the rim. I think in the half court, he struggled a lot more than in transition, though. That's where the numbers will differ. And it's something I do know and have heard from other people is like, okay, when the game slowed down and had to create for himself in the half court, Yegor Demin really struggled at the rim. And 6'10" and a quarter-inch wingspan, if you're the main guy, if you're on another guard, there's just not that many other dudes that are going to be that size with that wingspan. He's got to figure out some other kind of touch, some other kind of finish to get through people like that. And why the shot chart looks so blue everywhere too is just the athleticism isn't that great. Not physical for Yegor Demin, not very quick. Like mainly gets by with craft. Might be one of those guys that like the only way he can get open is with a ball screen, which isn't necessarily bad, but again, it's something to me that says, okay, don't take this guy in the top 10. I remember that being a big um, point of contention with Killian Hayes back in the days. Like, this guy can't get open without a ball screen, and that did end up hurting Killian. Remember, I'm the Pistons fan. I don't know how bad that ended up being and how much it hurt Killian Hayes' overall game. It could be that same thing with Diego Domini, but again, he's a willing shooter. That is the main thing to keep in mind. Anytime you have somebody that's a shooting concern, if they don't want to take them, I think that is a harder sell, because then you have to get their confidence up to take them from three as well as work on their mechanics. With Yegor, it's more of a like work on your mechanics, because he's going to take them. He took them like I said, what was it? 154 total threes. Again, 3-point attempt rate of 50.3%. They're there. He just has to learn how to knock down a better clip, whatever the mechanics are. Again, I'm not like a professional, not a shot doctor. This is one of those jumpers to me that I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. There's nothing glaring of like the offhand doing funky stuff or him like having a fall through or having terrible lower body mechanics. And part of it probably is just an over reliance on him to be one of the primary creators and floor spacers on a team that didn't necessarily knock down a ton of threes either. BYU, if we take a look at their squad, Egor Demin at the totals was the third leading 3-point shooter. Richie Saunders, 43.2%. Trevin Nell, 42.9%. Both good 3-point shooters. So it's like, yeah, it's hard to know what exactly is the deal with Egor Demin here. Walk back my previous statement. They did take a lot of threes. They have, what is it, 6 guys that took 100 or 6 threes or more on the squad, and Yegor's the only one out of those guys that shot under 35%. Again, I'm mystified when it comes to the jumper, to be perfectly honest. I don't know what it's gonna take to fix, and that's why I have Yegor outside of the lottery. It's like, there's a lot of reason it should fall, why it's not falling, I don't really have an answer to. 10 of 33 from left wing for Yegor Demin, 14 of 66 from top of the key, 21.2%, and then 13 of 39 from right wing, 33.3%. Really, it's only that top of the key shot that is like absolutely 100% garbage. Like 30.3% you live with, taking tough shots, 33.3% you live with, because that's a totally fine shot for somebody who's going to take a ton of threes and did take a ton of threes. But without a 3-point shot, I don't know how the rest of this works. Again, we're not talking about a driver, we're not talking about a free throw generator, we're not talking about a mid-range shooter. It comes back down to shooting from 3. And if you're not gonna be the primary guy to or even like the 3rd option on offense, then you have to be a supplementary guy. Even if you're the 4th and 5th starter, even if you're a Rajon Rondo level passer, which I do think Yegor can be. Yegor's one of the most difficult guys to talk about because the standout skills are so great that you cannot ignore them, and you gotta put him in, like, top 15, top 20 no matter what, in my opinion, but the concerns are such that it's like, "Man, this guy might be unplayable at times and really might take either a team that's like, 'Okay, we're gonna give you a couple years and work on you,' or a team where they're like, 'We already know how to hide these deficiencies if they don't end up getting better.'" 34.6% assist rate to 21.9% turnover rate. Obviously, the turnover rate is concerning, but 34.6% assist rate. Again, you just have to turn on the film. That would be the number one thing with Igor for me of like, turn on the film, man. Turn on the film, turn on the film. I don't care all those shots that clank. I don't care. There's some games where it doesn't seem like he wants to score. The passing every time is just like, my goodness. There are how many guys can make that pass? And number two, how many guys that size can do this on the move from a standstill, making the hockey assist where it's like the pass to one guy and then another guy passes and they get the shot. All these things. Every last single passing play with Yegor is just like, oh, it's clear again. Point guards are born, they're not made. Another great example of this and something you want to get on the basketball court because any passer with this size is a gigantic mismatch also. One other thing to look at, the conference numbers as well go down, 9.8 points per game in conference for Yegor Demin, still 5.5 assists, 3.2 turnovers, but the shooting numbers really went down at that point to 22.7 or 22.6% from 3-point range on 4.2 attempts per game in conference play for Yegor. Again, 14 to me screams, we got you at the end of the lottery, but we're not going to give you like major usage right away. We understand we have to work on a lot of things, but we still believe in your potential, which is why I put Yegor at 14. And honestly, I really have a hard time moving him at a 14. If you wanted to put him at like 8 or 9, I'm not going to stand in the way. But for me, the last pick in the lottery, it's like that. It's like, yes, we're still in the lottery. We still need to take a home run swing, but we also at 14 are not just going to hand the keys over to you and take our time with your development. It is what I think needs to happen with Egor Demin. The size, the passing ability, the questionable offense. My comp for Egor Demin ended up being Grievous Vasquez. If you don't remember Grievous Vasquez played at Maryland and then ended up being in the NBA. I want to say like 8 years. I mainly remember him on the Pelicans being the most productive there in New Orleans. Maybe they were the Hornets back then. I forget. But same type of thing where he's a super tall point guard. The offense kind of came and went, but fantastic passer. And even though he might not have been the best athlete, the main reason he came to my point guard was because he's super tall. I mean, he was one of the few guards over 6'5" back in the day, and just got so many easy shots for his teammates, and everybody wanted to play with him because of that. Even if he wasn't always necessarily guarded, even if his offense wasn't falling all the time. That's why he kept getting jobs, and that's why he started some games, mostly was a backup. But I do think Igor Demin reminds me a lot of a Grievous Vasquez. And again, with my comps, I try not to be overly hyperbolic where everybody is, oh, this guy's an all-star, that guy's an all-star, especially if it's somebody outside the lottery. And then as I go further down, I try and comp guys to like other dudes that were undrafted, other dudes that ended up being like just a rotation piece or the 15th guy, but he played in the league for like 20 years or whatever. And that's where it is with Yegor. Is like I see the potential. I personally can't buy into it, but I also don't want to discount it and I don't want to pump it up too much. So it was also difficult, as I said, this archetype of player where it's like they're a super good passer. That's their main skill. Who knows what they are on offense? Defensively, they're fine. Like that kind of player doesn't exist so much anymore, but I do think it can still be successful for a guy like Yegor Demin. And if you're patient with him, take some time. All you got to do is really iron out that 3-point shot. The finishing seemed to be fine. The paint numbers seemed to be okay. He got to the free throw line enough. It really just comes down to like, can this guy be a capable, as Jam puts it, NBA shooter to where you have to be guarded? Somebody like a Marcus Smart, somebody like a Jay Crowder, and maybe necessarily doesn't play point guard. That is the other part where it's like, I don't know that teams are going to give him a ton of usage, especially if the offense ends up being inconsistent. 24.5% usage for Yegor Demin here at BYU. That's, again, that's lead guy territory, anything around 25. But it also doesn't scream this was a ball dominant guy that needed to have possession all the time. I think a lot of times he started possession and set his guys up for other things. So Rivas Vasquez is where I end up comping Igor Demin. And remember, 14, last pick in the lottery. You're taking a gamble on the potential that could be something else, but at the very minimum, okay, super tall playmaker that's going to make everybody's life easier, and maybe the offense is a little inconsistent. Some things to look at on YouTube for Igor Demin. Hoop Intellect had a nice scouting breakdown of Igor about 3 weeks ago. Everything on NBANoceilings.com, another one where a lot of dudes talk over Igor from the preseason. During the season, go check out all the stuff, No Ceilings NBA, NoCeilingsNBA.com did on Yegor Demin, and then Cash Iggy had a bunch of Yegor Demin tape as well. Go look at all the Cash Iggy stuff to see the assists, to see like even when the offense isn't falling, you see the impact that Yegor Demin's overall play on offense made and how he's able to get his teammates easy passing. And the defense too, I kind of glossed over the defense, but the defense isn't terrible. And I don't think you put him on point guards for sure, especially against quicker guys, but like the NBA wing with that size, Igor did end up averaging over a steal per game. I think he was active and willing to do there. That's some 1.2 steals. What I call young guy stuff, like the young guy stuff of like, oh, he doesn't know where to go on defense all the time. Like he's sometimes out of position. Like to me, that stuff is in almost everybody's scouting profile. And if it's not, then they're the exception, not the rule. And that's the thing that should be celebrated. But I think for the most part, like that kind of stuff, getting lost or not understanding off ball positioning and whatever, most everybody does it. And it has to be a glaring thing to where you don't care about it and show a blatant disregard, like we'll see with Derek Queen, spoiler alert, to where you end up being like, okay, this could be a major problem. But for Yegor, I don't think it's that. It's just more an idea of reps and understanding your scheme And Yegor did understand how to use his size to get 1.2 steals per game. So I do think that's going to be a good thing. Definitely check that out with all the cash stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to us on Yegor Demin here. Let me know what you think about Yegor because he is one of the more difficult evals. For me, I can't disregard the passing. It's top notch, but I really don't know what the offense ends up being in the NBA. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. We will catch you next time. I'm going to